Welcome to the New York Ad Festival's Emerging Technology panel as part of the Future Now category. Today, over the next several minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about emerging technology and what's going on. And I'm joined by a few industry leaders across the space. And it's going to be a really just fun conversation hearing about how technology creators are really changing the landscape of, how we engage and communicate. And with that, my name is David Justus. I'm Executive Director of Technology at AKQA, and I am joined with my fellow panelists. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Maurice O'Leary. I am Creative Product Lead of Emerging Platforms and Products at Meta. And I'll hand it over to you, Walt.
All right, thank you. I'm Walter Geer, Chief Experience Design Officer at VMLY&R.
Awesome. Well, I think to get started, we'll take it nice and easy. I mean, we are here in the lovely Creative Studios a shop in the woods. And this is obviously very exciting because we're all virtual. But to that point, what are the sort of, woohoo! What are the things in emerging technology that you're really excited about, as you look at the Metaverse, Web 3.0, blockchain, et cetera? Like what really gets you excited?
For me, it's the creator economy, like really seeing how it's a tipping point now. Like it's such a historic time to really open up what's available to them, handing over the tools, seeing new jobs arise like we've never seen before. Like, for example, in here, we're in Horizon Worlds and seeing how avatars are just constantly getting new jobs, turning up as comedians, turning up as actors, turning up as independent creators. Like, it's just democratizing so much technology at the moment to an even playing field, and it's so exciting to see it flourish.
Yeah, I mean, that's great valid points. I think also when you think about what we're doing now, and even this space, the way brands can engage with other consumers, and just take that out of the play entirely, how people can engage with each other now is on an entirely different level. And I think it's so unique, and I think that there's so much opportunity. I mean, I'd first want to say that I can't wait till we all get legs, right?
Not just hovering torsos.
There's like torsos on arms and heads. But I think that, I think that there's certainly a way to go, right, in these spaces. I think that eventually we're going to see it get to a point where, like, I really look like me, right? And we're doing full scans, and it's like the more realistic kind of views when you get out in here. And I think when that happens, so many people are just going to be like laying in bed all day and doing nothing. We're already working from home, right? And then just going to put on their headsets and just like veg out.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of playing off of that point a little bit, do you think that, obviously there's been VR, it's been around for a while. I think with the Quest 2 and with a lot of the new stuff that's been going on, it's definitely starting to reach a certain degree of adoption. But do you think that the pandemic and everyone working from home and all that has shifted the way that people are thinking about these spaces and, how you bring people together where you couldn't travel? Like, how are you seeing that kind of impact across your daily lives even?
Yeah, totally. And to your point about the pandemic, like everything changed. The way we worked changed. And the new technology at the moment, the hero is really accessibility. Being able to give everyone the same tools to have access and to, really be part of all new jobs that are creating, especially in the creative field. It's massive as far as the opportunity goes there. But yeah, that's kind of such a huge opening.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic changed everything for everybody, right? Entirely. And to your point about how we work and whatnot. But I think in the beginning, the first 6 months to a year, we saw this rapid growth from so many different brands now saying, oh my God, I can't take people in the store. Now I actually have to figure out what to do in the digital landscape. This was part of it, I think, when people just start to think about, okay, now let's start to take advantage of these spaces, what we do in them. But I still think we are some ways away because, like any disruptive moment in time, right, there are going to be a several amount of people who then go back to the normal stuff they used to be doing, right? It's like we saw this huge leap forward in advances in what the digital advertising meant for brands. And then we saw a huge step back. Now, we're not exactly back to where we started post-pandemic, but we most certainly have kind of taken a bit back. But when we do talk about accessibility and whatnot, I think that when we get these things down to a price point that every person gonna get access to, then we create opportunity for everyone, right? Because let's be honest, not everyone has these headsets right now, and they're not cheap, right? And so I think that I'd love to see where this goes years from now. I think that when Apple releases their version of this headset, that's going to be the bit of a game changer, because when Apple does it, like, then everyone's like, okay, great, let me get in line now. But I think that we do need to get to a point where it is really, truly accessible for all over a period of time.
Yeah, totally. And so, when you talk a little bit about that, I think we saw this, during the last few years. I always go back to QR codes, right? Wildly popular in Asia, but in the United States, like, nobody would have a second time of day. But now, to your point, like, everyone sort of adopted learning how to use it. Now QR codes are everywhere, and they have the technology. So do you see the actual physical technology? How do you see that, evolving and changing the way? And, I would even push beyond just the 3D Metaverse VR world into, how are things like blockchain and NFT going to start changing the way that brands and creators engage now that this is now starting to become more adopted? So how do you see that sort of interplay between, brands and creators in these new worlds?
It's so massive. And I mean, here's a classic example. In the weekend in Long Beach, I went to an opening of the first NFT-inspired restaurant. And I was like, what? This
you
is
did
amazing. That? Yeah. So Bored Ape Yacht Club, one of the restaurateur had brought one of the NFTs, and he was like, why aren't we bringing this from virtual into the physical world? And so he launched this restaurant, and he used all of his artwork to create the boxes, the fast food boxes, and the signage and the whole building. And he's just finding this beautiful connection between virtual and physical, and that's incredible. And then I also go back to like livelihoods again, and what I think is going to be really interesting is the intersection of how the creator economy is changing and how brands make deals with independent creators on what these things are going to be. So for example, if a creator is building a horizon world like this one, and we've just announced monetization, so creators are going to be able to sell assets that they create in this world. What does that look like from a brand creator deal? Like, how are these deals going to come together when it's really about these supporting livelihoods? Will they strike different deals where they say to a creator, okay, you keep a percentage of the monetization for this world based on this agreement? Like, that's really interesting. Like, I can't wait to see how it all turns out. Really cool.
Well, and I want to push on something you said there, right? When you're talking about the NFTs and bringing the digital into the physical and vice versa, right? So we're all sitting here with our torsos and our, kitted out avatars that reflect our personalities. How do you see, as you start thinking about, and for anyone, like, how do you see creators bringing those two worlds together when you start thinking about identity and who you are in these spaces? Do you think we're just at the beginning of that? Do you think there's things that are really interesting going on there? Like, what do you sort of see in the environment and space?
It's interesting, man. I think it's, we look at what's going on now with NFTs and this whole space. It's basically like 99 when everyone's trying to figure out .com, right? It's like you have a whole bunch of people sprinting a whole lot of different directions, and then eventually, IAB then comes in, steps in and says, okay, everyone, we're going to do it this way. Now we're going to, scale this out because everyone's kind of building in one specific area, one specific way, specs, et cetera. I think that we're going to eventually get to that point. Emails. I think we're going to eventually get to that point because right now we're in a space where everyone's just like, hey, let's grab this, let's grab that, and let's just see what works. And I think you're going to see a vast amount of people kind of left behind at some point, right? It's difficult. When I think of, ownership and what ownership means, I think to your point, right, this creator economy is incredible, right? And it's like now people are going to truly be able to own it. There we go.
Yes.
Right? Confetti for everybody. So just a simple fact that like just to be able to own the stuff that you do, like So here's a great example, right? Like I invented and patented skippable pre-roll, right? Everyone and their mother runs that now, right? If I could have like legit owned that, right? Yeah. You guys wouldn't see me in here. I'd be on a real island someplace.
Be in a yacht. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like my point is like the ownership aspect is important. With the whole kind of Web3, like I don't know, like I think we're a bit ways away. But man, I think we are at the start of something that's really unique and special and a space where anybody can truly shape and mold what this becomes. But it's about being involved early and really pushing, because like innovation, we talk about innovation, like there are thousands and hundreds and thousands of failures before you get to that one. And I think that we're still in a space where everyone's trying to figure out even what to really do with NFTs besides, great, I'm going to drop a pair of sneakers and then I'm going to own them in the real world and own them in here. Like, what can that tech really be eventually?
Yeah. And raising, like we talk about, we talk about raising the GDP, raising the GDP and the metaverse as it approaches us. And it's so important. And I think my mind is blown, and a lot of what you're saying, Walt, is all the job opportunities. Like I was writing a list the other day of the things that I'm just seeing in worlds, from like entertainers, singers being paid as their avatars to come into venues and perform. And I was like, okay, right. It means that you can do that in the health service, like the mental health service, and then and then how does shops and bring in the economy from that point of view as well. And then the other thing from an industry point of view is we're in here filming right now, right? So we've got John Burnett, who has built this world, who's filming for us. That's a job. So him actually being in production, filming, is a whole new thing for the advertising industry to wrap your head around. And it was like, everything that you do in a normal shoot, you now need to consider when filming in a world. You want to do a pre-prod, you want to do an avatar release form, you want to check the lighting, like you want to do human storytelling. Like that, to me, even from an advertising production arm, is like, woof.
Totally
crazy,
well, and the fact
amazing.
That we are all in very different locations right now having this conversation, but yet it feels like we're basically just sitting in the same brightly colored room together, which just changes everything, you know?
The thing we don't talk about often though, because the first time when everyone says metaverse, like this is what people think, right?
Yeah.
And people don't stop to realize that there's multiple portals and ways into the metaverse, right? Your mobile device and looking at things like augmented reality. But here's the thing that I think when we start to talk about this entire space and what it means, I think the real opportunity is with AR, right? Because I think what's going to happen is like when I walk, so like today we walk out of the house and we have our mobile devices, right? But prior to that, it was like, great, I could take my laptop anywhere we go, right? But now our laptops are left at home, right? It was desktop before, you couldn't take it anywhere. Then the laptop, you take it someplace. Then the mobile device, they're taken out of your car. I think what's going to happen now is we're going to move to a space where like your mobile device you still take and use, but then it's going to get left in your car. And when you walk out of your car, it's going to be what you wear on your face, right? Then it's going to be like interacting with products and brands is going to be the things that I see, but how I communicate them is through conversation, right? And not even necessarily touch. It's what I say and what I get back from that brand. So like the UI designers of today, like even like building these spaces, like 10 years from now, they're going to like the important designs are going to be copywriters, right? It's because we're going to build entirely like it's conversational, discussions back with brands.
Right.
I love that. And then also, go.
No, go ahead.
And then also, like, from a traditional creative point of view, and it's a lot to do with AR, it's the leap to how do you put the person genuinely and authentically in the center of the experience. Because we've for years been writing an A to B linear storyline as a TV script, and now it's like, no, the person is going to have their own experience. Like, David, when you came in the other day, you went for a wander into the dark edges. You're like, I want to see how far this goes.
Like, where does that go? Right.
Where does that go? And I thought that was a perfect example of, we can try and control an experience as much as we can, but really understanding once someone comes in and uses this technology, they're going to use it how they want. This is their story. They will influence it. They'll go in 6 degrees of freedom in this scenario. And how do we create amazing experiences factoring all of that in?
Right. Yep. And I think you touch on an interesting point, both with the AR side and with that, which is around expression and, online identity, offline identity, different contexts of things. And I think one of the questions that I have and would love to get your point of view on is, as brands are thinking about engaging, the roles of people are changing, right? Like how you film, you can do a complete shoot in the metaverse, right? And you're using AI with digital, doppelgangers, all of that stuff. And then you're also moving and democratizing things towards the creators. What are some of the guidelines that you would say, like if you're talking to brands or you're talking, like how do you, for lack of a better word, how do you put things into this, experimental space while being sincere and, sort of not just, cringeworthy or just copying what others are doing? Like what are those important lessons that you would have for brands as they start thinking about, how do we play and how do we play earnestly in this space?
Yeah, always purpose. So like, what is the purpose of the thing that you're building? What is coming back to what we've been doing for years in the advertising industry, what is the core human insight as to what would someone thank you for making this experience? So rather than just rushing into Horizon, for example, and building a piece of architecture, what is the human energy that you're going to have flowing to that space? You know, really being intentional about the creative journey that you're doing and putting a human at the center of that. And then the big thing, and I'll pass it over to you, Walt, is like really thinking about having the right people in the room when you're looking at the idea, like diversity and perspective. Have you thought about everything to make sure everyone feels like they belong in that space? All the way down to the way avatars are showing up, the things that you have available. Everything is from a human first, human connection point of view, and to keep track of that all the way through.
You nailed it. I mean, I couldn't have added to that or made it any better. I think at the end of the day, it's the same. You create in these spaces the same way you create in any space for a brand, right? And you have to move with authenticity, right? But you made such a valid point where you said, like, you have to create an environment where someone feels like a part of it, right? Is welcome, right? That's the one thing that's slightly different about these spaces, right? So, and I hate to bring up the word like inclusivity, but like when you come into these spaces, like immediately you're gonna feel put off or put on, right? Like whether, okay, great, I get this vibe, this feels like me or not. So it's really understanding, to your point, understanding these individuals and understanding the people that you're going after and ensuring that you're building something that's not just an experience, but an experience that's actually something memorable and something that like in a moment that matters to these individuals, right? So we often say that we look at the kind of the consumer journey, right? To understand where a user goes, what they do, what they buy, et cetera, et cetera. Now this is just another, like consumer touch point in that journey. So we have...
Oh, he froze.
Highly relevant.
He's back.
Internet issues are still part of the
snap.
Metaverse.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so relevancy. I was just going to relevancy. Relevancy matters when you're building around. I was like, wait, what happened? Where'd I go?
He's back.
Right. So that is something that you both have sort of hit on, right? And I think it's really important is inclusivity, right? And thinking about how are you creating experiences. And so when you talk about that, and you talked a little bit about it, I mean, do you see that going into the realms of like co-creation with people and fostering community, or like how do you sort of, because we have set rules for like what inclusive design on the web looks like, but I don't, to your point, it's a new area right now that we're in. What does that mean when we start talking about these shared environments?
Yes, man. I think it's you have to, like, when you're building anything, it doesn't matter what you're creating, right? You have to involve people from different backgrounds, right? Because if we're creating something that's whatever, like these rooms, right? Like I might go in these rooms and might be things that, like, I'm not used to this type of setting, right? Because this is not just where I have come from, right? Or so like you have to build with everyone in mind, and building with everyone in mind means you have to have multiple set of people with different understandings and backgrounds to actually work on these, especially in these spaces where it's so important, right? Because we're creating like destinations where people come. It's not just like something I see on the screen and like, great, I don't like this, I'm out, and then I swipe away, right? We're stepping into these worlds, and it's important that we actually create these spaces that people feel welcome in.
And the communities, right? And always going back to what is the purpose of the world you're building? What is the community that you're bringing in? Spending time in that community. We're seeing a really nice flow from Facebook communities and Facebook groups, specialized shared interests, and using those kind of established communities to build worlds for. There's a nice synergy happening there because you've got this beautiful, rich fan base already. They're already having a daily work chat thread, a daily messaging thread, and then you can bring them into your world for a purposeful an event. And seeing that flow is fantastic. The biggest thing is really having the intentionality at the front, understanding what work you're going to put into keeping something feel alive and breathing. I like to say that Worlds is, think of it like a human living, breathing design file. It has a certain limit, file size limit. How many people do you want in that space? Is it intimate? Is it vast? And how you keep it alive and breathing, and how long do you want it to be running for? And like when you think about building a world like with that in mind, you're like, okay, there's a responsibility here to make it great, to make it diverse, to make it inclusive, to make it all the things that it needs to be a good human space. Yeah.
And so I think, a lot of, what I'm hearing you guys talking about is that idea of inclusivity, making sure that there are drinks that you can have while sitting in the space, really co-creating, and being authentic. And I think being authentic is a really key one, right? That I think everyone talks about because it is a new emerging technology. But on the flip side of that coin, what are the things that you're concerned about? What are the watch outs that you see sort of as, as everyone runs off in every possible direction with this new medium and these new technologies, what are some of the concerns that you have, or some of the watch outs that you would give to others?
Being catfished.
Sure.
Yes.
That's hilarious. I come back to these are choosing the right piece of technology for the purpose of the idea that you want to create. I think there's always, and I'm guilty of this in the past, I get so excited by new technology, like a magpie chasing a shiny thing. I'll want to rush to use it, but it's really pausing to think about what you want to achieve. What is the piece of technology that will work for that, rather than trying to run for something shiny and then trying to retrofit it in. And then if you are, let's say, for example, using Horizon as a piece of technology, really considering how you will keep it alive and breathing, because everyone's going to rush to build a storefront or a building, but the real hard work begins after it's built, and you need to maintain it and keep it really intentional and really on target for its purpose. Like really factoring in the time and human energy to hold events and to understand what people need from it is so important.
Yeah, I think the one thing I think about is safety, right? It's like when you invite brands into these spaces, they want to know, like, all right, is this a space that's safe for my consumers, the people that are actually coming here? So to the funny joke of being catfished, right? Like, God forbid, some random person comes in here. Oh, here's a great example, right? Clubhouse. Have you all used Clubhouse?
Yep.
Right? Clubhouse is cool. Right? I was like one of the first people on Clubhouse, like I don't know, a couple years ago. And what we saw is like massive amounts of people were like, just because they can come in there and not use their profile picture, their faces, right, and not have like a tangible thing, right, it was just their voices. And there's this sense of, well, I can convince people to do whatever I want if I could speak really well. So what in turn happened is there was a hell of a lot of people that got scammed, right? And then it was like, MySpace, like 2001, right, in an audio version. So when you think about these spaces, how do we create environments that are safe for brands, right? Because at the end of the day, all these creators want to get paid for the work that they're doing and creating all these amazing spaces. Getting paid means you need to actually work with a brand. Having a brand involved, they're going to say, or should say, okay, well, how am I going to know that Joe Schmo or this person over here isn't going to come in and ruin that experience for me? So I think we need to think about, how do we instill safety measures around some of this stuff? How do we ensure that the people that are coming in are the people who they say they are? Very much so like Instagram and all these social media, right? Everyone has verifications. Is there a way to verify people? Right? If we create this creator space and we have people coming in here, you're talking about the work, how do I know that this guy over here really isn't who he or she says he is, right? So I think that's going to be an important thing that we need to think about, and especially exchange of, when we talk about Bitcoin and money and like in these digital spaces. I mean, and that's why I'd say that I'm rambling now, but that's why we say like there's so many people who are insecure about getting in, because it's like, oh my God, I don't want my wallet to get jacked. I know a lot of people whose wallet just, Yeah. Well,
and I think that's the beauty, right? It's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you do have the ability to express yourself and have different identities and different contexts of your identity when you talk about these spaces. But on the other hand, to your point, like, you need to make sure that you're being safe and responsible about all that. And I think, to your point, like, it's still very much a Wild West. And as we move forward, we'll figure out the right policies and rules around how to best be responsible and, foster the creative community as well as the brand experience, and figure out how to bring all that together. And I think, just in kind of recapping this conversation, it really sounds like the key things are: be authentic, like understand who your audience is and how you be authentic to them, find the right creators that represent that, and like bring them as part of the process, and make sure that it's diverse and inclusive with everyone, and making sure that you're creating these sort of welcoming environments. And then I think you bring up a really good point about safety, brand safety, and putting the right policies, and like thinking, not just running headfirst into it, but thinking about how do we do this responsibly? How do we really purvey this as a medium, rather than a whole bunch of, failures that results in people not wanting to do it and abandoning it. So I think, those are some really strong points that people can take away from this. My last question to you, and just sort of wrap this up, is really just anything else you want to say about the emerging tech space, and anything that you want to hear to give to the audience about, the future and where we're going.
I don't, man. I am really hopeful to just see as many creators as possible come in here and just build, right? Yeah. Build. I think that, over time we'll all learn, kind of see the limitations of what, this can or cannot be. And I'm just excited, man. So I'd say to people, like, get out there and make shit, Don't worry about like, you know,
experiment.
This box, go out. Yeah, experiment and just do things and go crazy and let the world see it, because too many creators, the biggest problem, too many creators build and they like do this, right? They keep it in here, right? Share with the rest of the world, man. Let everybody see it and work with each other, because that's the biggest miss. It's like so many of us like work on these little boxes and don't want to share stuff with any people. Share and build together.
And it comes down to exactly what you said. It's all about making things, right? And this is what this is what gets us excited. It's like we just want to make things, and now more than ever we can make things in this new space. And it's not like it's democratized. The tools are available for all of us. I'm excited and I'm interested to see as what we do from a traditional advertising point of view, especially in a space like this where we may rush to go and use really big production houses to create things. And the true gold and the superpower is leaning into the independent creator community. They are miles ahead. They have such talent. And every time we bring an idea to work with them, they just skyrocket it. So really bringing the independent creators along as part of this journey is going to be gold.
Right. So just sorry, I lied. One last kind of question. I mean, and to that point, and one of the things that we've been hearing, do you see the role of brands in a lot of this as facilitators, like identifying creators, all of that represent their core ideas and their products, and facilitating their ability to create and giving them scale and reach? Do you see that as a major role for brands?
I think it's a two-way. I think it's a two-way street. Yeah. Right. Like, because as much as I'm going out and trying to see who's doing what, like I expect for these individuals to be coming to me as well. Right. It needs to go back and forth, because I'll be honest, like with the amount of work that I do on a day-to-day basis, like I just don't have time to really go out and be assessing everything that's out in these spaces and seeing what's good and what's not. So again, it needs to be more of a strategic partner between the creators, between the agencies, between the brands, everyone really coming together and sharing.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, because it's a lot. Awesome. It is a lot to go through and try and find. Like, it's over 10,000 worlds built in Horizon already. So you're like, it's a lot.
And the sky's the limit.
And find referencing.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Like all of the assumptions you have about physics in the real world kind of go out the door, and that allows for so much more experimentation that you wouldn't get historically. So, go far and wide, experiment, and then, we'll figure out what's the right way. Cool. Well,
what are
thank
you
you all.
About?
What am I excited about? I mean, I think for me, I am most excited about just the fact that, we can have these conversations in these spaces without necessarily having to go there. In my role, I talk to people all over the world constantly. And so being able to have more intimate or like connections with people that feel more personal, I think is what really excites me quite a lot about it, because it's really hard to do that when you have like 10,000 Zoom calls, right? And this is definitely more, you can read more body language. It's not, still not the same as human, but it's better. And so than a Zoom call. And so I think for me, that's really exciting. And I think, it's seeing what happens next. I was thinking of like old design, and you had like the original iPhone and Mac where it was skeuomorphic design, right? Where it was like, let's imitate reality, and that's how we're going to do things. And then that evolved over time into new and interesting ways. That's what's going to happen in these spaces and these things. And I'm really excited to see where that goes. I don't think anyone knows where that's going to go. So that's what gets me going.
Awesome. Love it.
Love it.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Here in the Metaverse.
This is my first meeting in the Metaverse.
I know. Yay! This is awesome. Woohoo! But yes, thank you also to Meta and the Creative Shop for allowing us to use your amazing space. Looking forward to judging these awards and seeing where things go.
Indeed.
Awesome. Alrighty.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye.